was down, man. I was probably down for a
Yeah.
good 3 months. My team, my new employees are excited because they're doing great work and it's paying off. And I have to go to them and say, hey, all of that was a scam. Like, we're pretty much screwed. You're clinched up and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll get there. For me, it's like, all right, you're going to kick me when I'm down, but I'm going to get back up at some point.
Brad, thanks for joining me today. For those that don't know, me and Brad, we're in a peer group together, and unfortunately have not got to meet in person. But we have ideas or plans that hopefully that can happen in the next year. So
We're
good to have
golfing
you,
soon.
and good to talk to you as always, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Kurtis. We're going to be golfing soon, hopefully this year, sooner than
Yeah,
later.
hopefully so.
Once
I'm
the
I'm
snow
trying to
goes
make it
by.
out to your area, so we got to make the
Yep.
travel work because there's some good golf out there. So
There is.
yeah. Well, today we wanted to talk about Brad's business, automation links, and uh, financial struggle that he went through. So let's just set a little bit of foundation for people. What do you do at Automation Links?
Yeah, we help people automate their marketing. As simple as that sounds, it's very hard to do. So that means placing things like email marketing, setting up ads for clients, building out those systems to make sure all of their leads get followed up with. We started 10 years ago, Curtis, helping people with Google ads and still do. But it's changed along the way, helping them with Google ads, then Facebook ads and email marketing. And now ChatGPT ads are coming out. So just a transition every year and trying to just help good businesses grow online.
If there's someone that I want to talk to and know about what the latest thing that's going on, Brad is that person because he's always experimenting with these new things. What's the latest? You mentioned the Chat GPT. I'm assuming that may be one of the things, but what's the latest like breakthrough or thing that you found that you're like, something new out there that you've been experimenting with, playing with?
We've been getting a lot of leads from ChatGPT. And since we do offer advertising services, we're building out the system to actually help people get those ChatGPT ads set up. So just most interesting thing for me is how can you get your business to show up on a ChatGPT search result?
Yeah.
Kind of like Google and Google used to be. It's like a gold mine right now if you do it right. But it's a lot harder than it sounds. So we've been just really diving into that. And because I know every single business I work with, including myself, I'd love to show up on a ChatGPT search result, whether it's an ad or it's an organic. And some numbers I've learned is people trust the ChatGPT result about 22% more than a Google result, which is interesting. So,
Wow.
I'd love to just show up that my most interesting thing is showing your YouTube video on a ChatGPT search result. That's pretty cool to see when that happens.
Yeah, that is cool. It's fascinating how this world is changing pretty quickly from the marketing side, and I think having partners that can help you with that is really good. So, being in business 10 years, you've seen a lot of stuff. And like I mentioned, we're in a peer group together. And last year, you had a bunch of transitions and things that you were doing. So you've done the remote thing and you were moving to in person. So what was your thinking behind that and kind of talk about where were you and what made you get to that point of making that move?
Yeah. So we actually met with Trenton, who is, was serving as kind of a mentor for us, part of our peer group, the owner there. And we're like, all right, what do we do? Do we stay small, keep working from home? Work with less people, or do we really try to grow this thing? So our goal was we wanted to go from 1 million a year to 3 million a year. So in order to get that, his advice was you need to open an office here. You need to hire locally. You need to get rid of all your online freelancers because they're obviously making you do double work, and you need to hire a great team. Preferably people right out of college that you can train your way, train in the systems you have. And so we decided to do that. So last January, we got an office building. We started hiring locally, and we've been able to hit our goals and our marks because of that. But a lot of strain along the way. It's not easy. It sounds easy, but it's not.
Well, that's a huge transition, especially from like a cultural perspective. I'm curious, like with the freelancers, what issues were you having with those freelancers?
Yeah. So you hire, a freelancer to help you accomplish something, something online, a business task. So when you go to send that back to the client, you have to have me or someone on our team take a double look, and they're going to notice mistakes. And then do we just fix the mistakes, or do we teach the freelancer how to fix their own mistakes? And then we have to go send that to the client for approval after the mistakes are double checked. And we're the ones sending that to the client, not the freelancer. So that's still equaling almost the same amount of time as if I would have just done it on my own. So we found a few great ones where we actually taught them our systems. You have to follow these, but you still can't give 100% trust in them communicating with the client, to where now, as you know, my team communicates with the client without me because they're in the office. They're able to speak with me before actually going and communicating with the client and with the work. So it's just so much easier to get real work turned around without needing me to double check everything.
Yeah, well, and what that system does, or the previous system, is it adds layers that slow things down as well, so then you're not able to move as quickly. And when you do stuff that's kinda cutting edge sometimes, it's like, well, if you're slowing it down, you maybe not as cutting edge by the time it gets implemented, right?
E-
Um,
exactly. We're a little late
so
now.
yeah, yeah, you can be you can be late then, and then they think, "Well, why am I going with the guy that's always late to the trend?" And you're like, "Well, I'm not late. It's just the freelancer, it's just this So anyways, that's interesting. And so then I do find it interesting that you talked about hiring directly out of college. What made that the decision? Because, like, if you go from freelancers, there's a lot of communication that's back and forth. Maybe, there's some uncertainty there, but with the young people, there's also uncertainty because they're doing it all for the first time. So what was the decision to go with the younger crew there?
Yeah, I think we tried with the more experienced crew. As I said, our mentor told us to go with the younger crew for a few reasons, but we also tried going with the more experienced. And I found out that the more experienced, they're doing it their way. There's also a reason they're not having a business on their own.
Yeah.
And then I realized I still have to teach them, and it takes me just as long to teach them as I would somebody younger at a lower cost that I can almost teach our way, right? Our systems way. Because honestly, anyone I've hired from college or somebody that's very experienced, they still don't understand or know what we're doing in the back end with our retargeting ads and with the pixels. And, we do some really advanced stuff, as you know. And so somebody, no matter where they're at, they still don't understand that. So I got to teach them anyways. So what it allowed me to do is build systems for those ideal people. So a year out of college, no one else would give them a chance. I wanted to give them a chance. And then here's the systems that you're going to learn for the first 3 months before you actually start doing it. And it's about the same and, much less in lowering costs than hiring, somebody that's been doing this for 15 years and doing it their way.
Yeah. It's a little counterintuitive in a way, but then if you think about what you guys are doing, you're also getting to train them in the way to think, like the way you think about stuff. So then when new things come, or when there's different opportunities, they're going to be more quick to identify those and assist in jumping on that. Then it's really hard to, retrain someone that's thought a specific way for a 10, 20-year career. And so that's also an interesting thing to think about. So that transition was really happening at the end of, say 24 into early 25. Is that timeline right?
Yep, that's timeline right. And then put in an offer and signed our first lease February 1st of last year. So
That's
going on a
awesome.
year
How
now.
how long was that lease for?
3 years up to five. So between
Okay.
3 to 5, it's up to us.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I point that out of you made this financial commitment to where leases are not generally, and especially like in this, market, like there's probably been some hot markets with commercial, but in general, it's like, especially when you have very specific things that you need, like it can often be hard to get out of those commercial leases. So you made this commitment, and then w- obviously this is great background setting, but you mentioned the chargeback deal. So can you talk to me about how and what transpired, that you had these issues?
Well, and I was telling you, we're both men of faith, so we know that
Yeah.
as soon as we decide to take a bold action or an action that we're called to, you're pretty much just going to go through a hurricane for a while. There's no like, it'll never stop, type of thing. It's an ice storm we're going through now, right?
Yep.
So we decided to get the office, which was great, but it needed a lot of work. So we actually put, you know, 1,000 into redoing the office to make it our way, out of our expenses. So as soon as we paid that, it was probably the same week, as we're in growth mode and we're hiring, we're also saying yes to a lot of people. So, not thinking anything of it, one of our clients was a sports bettor, online sports gambling bettor. Another one was in the cannabis industry, right?
Mm,
So as you're thinking growth and you're hired and you're just saying yes to everyone because you got to pay for this and you've got to get the rent and you got to remodel this place, you kind of lose track of your discernment on clients and who to take. So right when that bill was paid for our contractor, we had 3 credit card disputes come in pretty much just a few weeks from these businesses that we already knew we shouldn't have taken on as clients.
mm.
And when that hits, it's pretty bad month for everyone.
That's yeah, that is from a, you know, like you would think, and I'm just kind of saying this tongue in cheek, but you'd think being in business 10 years, like you'd be smart enough not to take on those clients. So
Yep.
are you are you saying you took on those clients because again, you now decide you're in growth mode. So did I guess walk me through like what were all the things that contributed to you taking those clients on?
Yeah, I think you know, if no one knows how Stripe dispute or online disputes work, right? The person pays you, even if you have a contract, they can still dispute it.
Mhm.
And then what they do is they take out 2 to 3 months of what was already paid plus an extra percentage, as like a fine, until it's completely settled. And you don't hear back for 2 months as well. So you're basically in the hole for 2 months. And so, that goes back to my contract, Curtis. I thought our contracts were good. Like even if someone tries to dispute this, we'll still win it, of course, because we've got these contracts. So for me, it was like, oh, we'll just say yes to everyone right now. And this isn't that bad of a business. And we've got the contract in place that will save us. And I guess just not being self-aware enough at that time. Yeah, I've never worked with anyone in the past. So, yeah, I thought maybe I shouldn't take on this type of client, but how bad could it be? And then said yes. And now I know for sure it can be that bad.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're providing the service and you're thinking, well, I'm not the one that's actually doing I'm not doing the thing. So you create this little justification of like, okay, these are probably outside our normal client, but it's still the same thing that I'm doing. So you probably knew that they were slightly outside, but then you didn't weigh the additional cost with that. So you mentioned we'll come back to kind of the Stripe side of that and how that works because I don't think most people realize how that works until they get in the
yep.
middle of that storm and then they're thinking, "What did I get myself into?" But let's let's back up to like when you think about that consequence when you're trying to work with them, for you guys the service delivery is the same. So what are you thinking are the risks when you take on that new client?
So, that new client could get their account banned. So we do all this work and then they can get banned.
Mm,
Um, they do all this work and they get paid and they could be screwing over their clients as well, which we found out in one of these cases they were doing. So those are risks that I guess I knew about, but oh, that would never happen to me. And also I think just taking clients too quickly was a concern. Like, they find me from my YouTube channel. They feel like they already know me, but we don't know them at all.
mm, yeah.
So we've actually even taken a change this last year to where somebody can't pay us until the third time they speak with us. So we have
Oh,
to vet,
interesting.
and we weren't even vetting people before, so maybe these people said they did, stuff for sports, but I didn't know that they were actually doing the betting online for the sports. But if we would have done 3 calls ahead of time, we would have known that and said, you know what, this isn't a good fit for us. So, it's kind of, it's a blessing and a curse. It helped us clean our systems now, but at the time, it's just not thinking things through. Probably because I didn't have the experience in it.
Yeah, well, and the thing is like there's that risk with every client you take on. Like I've now worked with business owners that, like we've talked about our shared faith background that were Christians that we really, connected. But then when you get into their business and see the way they operate, it's like, okay, there's things that you couldn't have known in advance. So there's always risks, even if you do all of the checks. So I think from your perspective, you're thinking, we're delivering this service, we're not actually, involved in that other side. We've got ourselves covered with, we're going to do our part. You know, we had a good feeling about them, even if the business, we do have some questions, and we have a contract that now covers us, right? So you're like, we've done our stuff. So you convince yourself and you walk yourself into this, oh, like we've done all the things. And I think that's what people, that's one of the things, and this is my little soapbox here of why I'm doing a lot of this, is like people don't talk about these problems enough. And so when people go through this, they feel like they're the only one that's gone through this and they feel alone and they feel like an idiot, right? And I think for you, I'm guessing there was an element of that for you. You've taken on this additional commitment, you've taken on these people, and then what was it like when those chargebacks hit that week? Like what was your mental state in that?
I was I'm I was down, man. I was probably down for a good 3 months, because it's like you have a lot of commitments. You got your family commitments, right? You have the business commitments. Now I have new hires. So I got to make salary. Um, and not only that is I have to go to my team and say, hey, you just worked really hard on this client account for the last 3 months. One of them almost tripled their business working with us. And you did all this great work. We were doing the positive emails like, this is awesome. You guys are crushing it. Super excited. My team, my new employees are excited because they're doing great work and it's paying off. And I have to go to them and say, hey, all of that was a scam. Like we're pretty much screwed. That let them down as well. And then I got to come and talk to you guys in my tribe group. And, I don't want to spend 30 minutes crying. So I come and say, here's my problem. I get some really good feedback. So, for me, it's down. I'm co-owners with my wife. So that's very helpful because at our lowest, we support each other. I think a lot of times arguments could, or frustration could happen with that, but we kind of do the opposite because we're working at it together. So I have her to go to, which is great. She has my back. And then having a good group of people in our tribe too has been super helpful. But yeah, it's not just a couple days for us, as you know, it's a couple months where we're like, man, we did good work. Somebody actually gave us a 5-star review and now we're in the whole 30K.
Mm.
So
And
it's rough.
yeah, I mean, you find yourself, you're generally like a pretty positive person, right? I mean, you generally are kind of trying to look for the rosy side of things. You know, um, but and just to be frank, like going to our tribe group that we're in together, like you came to these meetings and you are bringing issues that you're having for us to solve. I've done the exact same thing, and we're solving that issue for you, or we're not solving it because we can't do that. We're giving you ideas, and we're helping you think through it and what that looks like, and that can be extremely helpful. But most of that conversation, we convince ourselves in the middle of that, well, if we just solve this one problem, it's all going to be good. So oftentimes we don't share the actual depth of what we're feeling with that. There
Yeah.
can be, and I think some of the conversations that were had is like, I think Jason in particular, like in some ways, like kind of called you on the carpet a few times of like, dude, we've been talking about this. Like, it requires even still some massaging to get some of that out. And frankly, for me, like I kind of talked about it, I guess it was last, meeting or 2 meetings ago that we had, like 2025 was a more difficult year for us than I would have thought. And I
Yep.
didn't realize in the midst of it, you're always thinking the next thing and what that is. And so that is, again, going back to what we've kind of hit on here of like in the midst of it, you can be at these really low points, but then when you go to other people and you talk to other people, it's easy to still try and paint that rosy picture because you're like, you're thinking, "Oh, we just gotta fix this one thing and it'll be right." But
Yep.
when that you said 3 months, I mean, 3 months is a quarter of a year, that's a long time to be, like, mentally kind of struggling with that. Well, let's come back to the Stripe deal, but how did you get to that like, how did you get out of that kind of little rut that you're in, to finally push through and feel like you're kinda out of that fog?
It's called hope and faith. And then let's
Yeah,
find out what happens.
yeah, yeah,
You're clinched up and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll get there. I think it was, luckily, I think if it was our first year in business, I don't know if we would have survived it. Right. But thank goodness for the great clients we do have. Some other opportunities that came into the business. So I'd always try to use that as how can we fix it so it doesn't happen again. So even though I'm down, right, I still can see growth. We still had a plan to grow our business last year. So for me, it's like, all right, you're gonna kick me when I'm down, but I'm gonna get back up at some point. Maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months. But I think that really at first I was down, but it motivated me to say, I got 30K to make up for. I better close some sales. So I was actually motivated to keep growing the business and say, we're going to cancel that out. And I think
yeah,
as soon as we got some new customers, we started working with, higher quality people, which we always have been and always will. But we replaced the bad with the good. And once you start replacing the bad with the good is when you start feeling better and encouraged and motivated for that. So, it's like, all right, let's build the systems, make sure this doesn't happen again, but let's replace the bad with the
yeah.
good.
What I heard, to summarize is, like, you learned and then you kept moving forward, right? And if you don't keep moving forward, you don't like, that's where the real problems happen, right? And I think, again, that's what we're trying to communicate when we talk to people, when we talk in those peer groups and this is like that we're moving forward and we're trying to get help in that moving forward. I think that's where there's really some real value in there. Um, but you also, like, have the commitment of your team and all this other stuff there that you've like, "I gotta move forward. I've got no choice," right? And so that's part of that struggle, and that's part of that, that's what makes a good entrepreneur. So, um, let's go back to the Stripe, deal. So, the way Stripe disputes work is it doesn't matter what you've got, they can charge, you can charge, and then through the credit card or directly through they can just go charge it back. So talk to me about that chargeback process, how that works. I guess you just get an email notification, right? That oh, we got this chargeback. How does the chargeback system work? And you kind of already alluded to it a little bit, but let's like kind of get into the nitty gritty of that.
Yeah. So just as a quick tip for everyone, obviously you try to get a contract, but one thing I think a lot of people miss is always ask for the billing address on your checkout form.
Mm.
So a lot of systems allow you to just get their name, their email, and their payment details. But you will lose every dispute if you do not get their billing address, which is crazy to think that it's not just standard. So, so that's step number one. Uh, Number two is the person can file a dispute on their credit card, and there's obviously some that side with them more often than not. So I know a lot of businesses don't accept Amex a lot of the time because what happens is it's a 3 to 6 month window that they can dispute. So they can go to their bank and say, "Hey, this service wasn't offered to me. Give me my money back," and that's all they really have to say. And what they'll do is they'll take 2, 3. In our case, we even had one with 6 months of charges that they paid out of your account. So now you're in the hole. You're in the negative. So this isn't just money that maybe you're breaking even on, but it's also money from the past. And so what you then have to do is spend a few hours, if not more. I've spent 4 or 5 hours on one before, collecting and submitting the evidence. And as soon as you submit that evidence, they have up to 2 months, 60 days to review it and get back to you. And most times they side with the user. So if people are watching and they haven't experienced, they're like, no way that can happen. Like there's no way there is.
It
And
does.
It does.
Yeah.
And it happens. And you've got scammers out there, people that purposely do this. There's people where they call them out in Reddit and Facebook where they do this actually. They get free projects, they get a free website, they get free ads, they get all this stuff. And they're just known to know that they can dispute and they can win. So the more info you can collect up front, the better, but it's still going to take time and money out of your pocket.
So when they dispute it, they can go back 3 to 6 months. You also mentioned there's kind of a fee, or there's kind of what, talk to me about how that process worked with Stripe.
Yeah, they take out a certain fee. It might be like, let's say $45 per dispute that they hold as well. I don't really know what that's for, but
And then I think there's a dollar, isn't there a dollar amount that they hold on top of that in some way? I thought there was like an additional amount that they held out. I know that they can do that, specifically on new accounts. If you grow too quickly, they'll hold your funds. Um, but did they, I guess the $45 was the only fee, and then they held it for what period of time?
60 days, 2 months.
60
They
days.
held it as long as
Okay.
they possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so did you win any of those disputes?
So we lost one completely. That was from the sports betting guy. That was through
Okay.
an Amex. So since it was Amex and he must know some system, because I did find out that's somebody that does it to other people as well after my research. So we lost that. The other one, we split it 50-50. So we won one of them and we lost the other one. I don't know how that happens. Same contract, same payments. And then the third one, we ended up winning and getting, a lot of money back. But that was still 2 months after.
Did, I was gonna say, so what, I guess, they were all credit cards, right? Was there any, do you know, won or lost? You kinda said, "I don't know what," but it's like, was it different credit card providers? Did you have any idea of what caused you to win versus lose?
I Yeah, I guess the credit card provider is a good sign. I'd say I don't know if I've ever won one against an Amex. They
Mhm.
always end up winning, even with everything you have.
Mm.
Um, the one I split, I thought for sure we would win. Signed contract, billing address, proof of work, even a 5-star review they left us, and we submitted that, and it was with, let's say, MasterCard or something. And so we won 1 month and the guy won the other month. So that one I had have no idea why,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I do know that a lot of businesses do just accept ACH. So if you can do ACH, that is probably the best way to do it. But it just makes it harder. People got to have the cash out of pocket. With a credit card, they get their points back and they don't have to pay it all up front. So
Yeah, we've started just doing ACH. We still have some on credit card, but we started just doing ACH. Um, and we were upcharging for credit cards, so it's not like, we were allowing them to pay more, so, or allowing, basically to recoup that fee, so it didn't really impact us. But then with credit cards, you also deal with, like, the renewal issue, where if they get a new card and now it's rejected, now you gotta go chase that down. And obviously they can close a bank account, but generally bank accounts are more stable than what the credit card will be. Um,
exactly.
so obviously there's not one right way to do it. But the risk with credit card is there's a little bit more ease of payment, but you end up with the risk of chargeback, the risk of expiration, more likely that will, you know, that card will be canceled, and that you will, so even if it's not charged back, you may have an ongoing service, you may be providing that service, and r if you don't have systems in place to handle card expirations, you could end up in a point where you're delivering service that you've not been paid for, right? Um, and so that's something you've gotta be aware of, as well. So
And I mean, it'd be good to have also, at that time, even coming to our tribe group, I still didn't spill everything, that was going through me. But I always thought, it'd be good to have someone like you that on our team, or, to help us look at this stuff beforehand, and also help us guide us through that. Is that what you guys help with that?
Yeah, we can absolutely help with that, and I think and how much time do you think you committed to these disputes and all these issues to try and sort through it?
At least 15 hours, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yep.
so where you have an outside partner is that you're giving the responsibility over to is that outside partner can help. So now the business, because that's for you, that's time that you can't spend growing the business. You're having to go fight over these. And a lot of times, the reason chargebacks are so successful is because uh, a lot of times businesses decide it's not worth chasing, if they're a low dollar. Like obviously we're in a service that's a higher dollar service. So for us, we're going to go chase it. Um, but for, if you're charging less than $100 a month or $500 a month, then it's like you can spend a lot more time than that. Some will still chase it just from a principle. They
Yeah.
can't stand the fact that someone's going to get over on them. Uh, but yeah, it's hard. Did that have any impact to your Stripe account at all? Because sometimes I know Stripe will hold funds. They will if they see a account that they think is at a higher level of risk. Did you guys experience any of that?
No, just because we've had that account going on almost 10
Yeah,
years now. So if it was a new account, then I think definitely. So, I always recommend somebody slowly build up that Stripe account, even if you don't think you need it now, create some sort of payment processor now for the future. Just so, because if that happened month one, even month three, we probably would have been figuring, because it'd be really hard to go back and get all subscription cards on file again, right?
yeah. Well, and again, don't quote me on these specific details, but I've seen and heard of people that they've grown too quickly or they've had chargebacks and now Stripe or PayPal. I've heard PayPal is really bad about it. Um, I've actually had funds held in PayPal in a you talk we don't like gambling here, but I do a college football pick'em contest, and we got too much money in at one time, and they held the funds, and then thankfully they released it, but we had to make some changes because that was we weren't even making any money off of it. It was just holding the funds until the season was over and then paying it out. Um, it was just a hobby, with some buddies, and
Yep.
so you don't realize the power that they have, but they can hold a significant portion of the funds, up to all of the funds, depending on what situation they're seeing or thinking they see, and they can do that for, a long period of time. There's some limits, that the government puts on that, but it's not a short period of time. I've heard 6+ months in different scenarios. So, for businesses that are new or even on the edge, if now they're holding a large that can wipe out, I spend a lot of time talking about profits and cash. You may show profits, but if that cash isn't accessible, you might as well have made nothing, right? And so, that is a huge risk that people don't see, and don't think about often enough.
And even thinking about when we were start planning on starting the office, having someone like you guys to help plan for worst case scenario, right, would have been helpful. So yeah, we set aside this amount, we got this amount, we're hiring. Oh, but you didn't think of the fire that was about to come. So not even being prepared for that, I think would have been,
Yeah.
super helpful as well.
Well, and you guys had some cash reserves, like, set aside. You still also had the other money coming in. So this wasn't a this wasn't a, extinction event for you guys, right? So, um, there was still, even though it was stressful, it was still from that perspective, a limited, with now, if your account hadn't had 10 years, that could have been an extinction level of an event, right? Because a handful of chargebacks quickly can freeze other funds, make you to where you're not able to pay payroll, make you to where now you have problems with delivering on your service if there's ever any charges that are running through you. So there's a lot of consequences that can come from that,
Yep,
that thankfully uh, you guys didn't, have to deal with, and should hopefully never have to deal with, right?
exactly.
Knock on wood there. If you look back now, what other things would you want to communicate to people of how do you you know, not run into the same issue potentially with that, and how do you better navigate that along the way? What do people need to do to be prepared?
Yeah, and I think this is very hard, especially for new businesses, is learning to say no. So
Yeah.
spending a little bit more time, and to be honest, I even feel like it's more of like a play hard to get. Because if you just say yes to everyone the first time you talk to them, they're too easy, right? So you want to play hard to get and use that to vet your customers as well. And then also even dialing into who that ICP is. So instead of just working with anyone and everyone, like I mentioned, not only vet them, but say, is this the type of business that I want to do more work with? So, the businesses I mentioned, no, I wouldn't want to keep working with more people like them. So I probably should say no to that. So really dialing in to the ICP, playing hard to get and vetting them even more. And then also always recording your Zoom calls
Mm,
for proof. So thank goodness we have we record all of our Looms and um, our Zooms with Loom. And that is evidence as well that you can use.
yeah, that's a good, I hadn't even thought of that, but that's a great call out. Speaking to, like, vetting, one of the things that we've started doing, I'm curious if you guys have ever done, is like kind of a semi-trial period where we do an assessment for people. So we charge for that assessment, which tells us we do a little bit less vetting up front, but then we're doing a literally 5-hour engagement where we come in and we do an assessment of the business to see what value we think we can deliver. But through that, we get to work with them and we get to see, one, way more about our business, the business, than they could already, that we could have known previously. But then two, we get to see what they are, how they are to work with in that short period of time. Have you guys ever done like a trial period or test period like that where you do an initial engagement without the long-term commitment?
Yeah, we are now. So now we're building a custom marketing blueprint for them. And which you're right, that is a way where we can get money up front, but it's just a one-time thing. And then we can see if we like working with them or not. As an example, I did one for somebody and then we decided not to work with them ourselves
Yeah.
because we could see it from the beginning.
Yeah, we did one where that we were able to show a lot of value that we could deliver, but ultimately it was a simple business. It was not, and it was like, we would be stealing from you if we're charging you for an ongoing service. You just need to execute on these few things and you're going to have a huge thing. And it was like clear that it was not the right person to work for. Where before we may have gone to an engagement, and unfortunately they'd been taken advantage of by someone else who just said, yeah, we'll do this engagement. And they didn't charge them a monthly fee for, and we gave them in 5 hours 10 times more value than this person they'd been working a year and a half with. So, um, it's it's a great approach if it fits the business that you have, if it's possible to do with the business, and especially like with service type businesses. So that's a great call out.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so let's kind of wrap this up. I mean, I know, um, you guys were trying to, part of the transition to in person was you guys were trying to grow. Sounds like you guys have had some good growth. What do you think is next? What do you think is next for you guys?
Yeah. So we since we help people get ads set up, I'm seeing tremendous responses to the new ChatGPT ads coming out. So we're going to be one of the first ones to offer that and set that up for our clients. So we're just preparing right now, building a software out to help us manage that. And I think that building out our content, our YouTube videos, our blogs, all of our SEOs around that. And I want to be known as the guy to go to if you need ChatGPT ads.
Awesome. That's cool. Well, and I'd say Brad is the guy that you want to go to, or I'm willing to pay Brad just to hear the things he's thinking about and the little webinars and little things that he does, because it's like the value in the way that you test stuff and you're always kind of on the front end. Like for me, that's helpful to even hear that stuff, and it makes you think differently and with that. And so, you guys also are really good at local too, right? You guys can get hyper focused on what you're doing. So if you need something like that, that's something that you guys are really good at as well.
What would you want to show up for a ChatGPT result?
It's a
Coolest
good
stuff.
question. Yeah.
fractional CFO
Yeah,
in the world.
fractional CFO, I would say, well, we're focusing more on, cleaning and, security businesses now. So I would say, you know, and we're going to start doing more content in this, which will help in that as we want to be known as the people that are the experts at kind of managing finances for those sort of people. So whether that's the right tech stacks, whether that's they're trying to go to sell, whether that's they just need someone to bounce ideas off of, we want to be the person that we're the first person that is thought about and the first person that's always recommended. So that's our direction and where we're headed. So
Cool.
um,
Let's see. I'll be posting those ChatGPT results for you.
yeah, that's great. I'm excited for that.
Coolest, coolest CFO in the world.
That's right. Well, Brad, thanks, man, for talking. It's good to catch up and look forward to seeing what you do next. And I'll say this lightheartedly, but truthfully, what mistakes you make because we love to learn with you because I know you're always really good at sharing that. So
Yeah,
appreciate it,
for
man.
sure. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.